Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels. I'm your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and joining me is a returning guest. Yes, he enjoyed it so much the first time, he's back again for more. I'm talking to Mr. Jason Starr. Jason, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm very well. First off, let me just say, huge well done for Casual Fling. What an absolute bonkers book that was at the end. I absolutely loved it. I thought.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like 4 issues, and now it's in a graphic novel form. So it was good. Yeah.
As much as I enjoyed the floppies, reading them like issue by issue, I could see how the thing would work better as a graphic.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely cliffhangers for each episode, but I think when you could just like binge it straight through, it also works well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that some of the nuances between the relationship between the two leads, if you have to wait a month to get it, you miss out on that. As if you're reading it like all the way through, you're getting his Miguel's, I think it is. You get his frustrations all the way through. Of course, the desperation of the female lead for that middle act is palpable. It's really good. It's a really good read. Really good read. So well done for that. Absolutely. I have all issues in my collection over there somewhere. C's down there. There you go. Right. But enough of Casual Flings. We're here to talk about something else completely different. We're here to talk about this bad boy. Whoa.
Yeah, that's my new book.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what a great cover. How screams practically James Bond there, doesn't it? Yeah, all you need is a gun and a silencer on there, and you're there. So the next time I die, it's a novel. All right. So, tell us the story. What's the situation in the book?
It's about a defense attorney in New York who is one night he's trying to break up a crime. He winds up getting stabbed. And he wakes up in a new reality that's somewhere between the Twilight Zone and Philip K. Dick is the best way I could describe it. So it's definitely a departure from some of my previous books, which are probably more similar to Casual Fling, the graphic novel, in that they're psychological thrillers, crime fiction. This book has a sci-fi angle to it, a little bit. Some reviewers, not me, have compared it to the Twilight Zone and some of Philip K. Dick's novels. So it sort of has that vibe, but in the end, it still is very much a crime novel. There's murder and mystery in it, so it's sort of
So you've got the sci-fi element as the kind of setting, the kind of trappings, as it were.
Yeah.
But the relationships between the characters and the actions that they get into are pretty crime driven. Yes?
Yeah, and just I mean, the book is has like this alternate reality theme to it, which is like, a sci-fi trope that's, and I definitely wanted to explore that. But I think my intention is to do it in a way that would also focus on the crime elements in the story. It could also be read as sort of an amnesia sort of crime novel where someone wakes up in a new reality and has to figure out like not only has the world changed in this sense, but from a crime perspective, crimes have taken place, and he has to figure out what exactly happened and piece that mystery together. So there's like that mystery.
So from what it sounds great. Well, from what you've said there, a couple of movies kind of spring to mind regarding Henry, the Harrison Ford film. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
say a similar, guy goes into a store to buy some cigarettes. I think he gets shot, and wakes up and he's changed, and that changes his whole outlook on stuff. And
Yeah,
of
there's
course,
a little of that. I mean, I've always liked that type of story, like a sort of alternate reality story. I think on I think it was on Twitter and Instagram, I posted my films and movies that I thought were not necessarily influences, but like have the same vibe as the story. Okay. And I chose Memento.
I said, yeah, Memento, definitely. The memory thing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even It's a Wonderful Life. There's a movie, Identity.
Don't know that one.
That Ian Rankin was actually, I had seen it, but like Ian said that it reminded him of Identity, and then like I thought like, wow, it is kind of like, yeah, it does have that. So I realized that has, but yeah, definitely the Twilight Zone, definitely some of Philip K. Dick's books, but that's like the sort of overall vibe. Maybe some Jim Thompson's crime novels.
It's quite a hard thing to say, isn't it? I mean, Philip K. Dick, he's so, what's the word, eclectic at times, right? So for people who, when you say Philip K. Dick, people are going to think Blade Runner.
Yeah, you think of Blade Runner, or some of the books that were adapted.
It's like when you say Harlan Ellison, you always think of City on the Edge of Forever, but he did more than just one Star Trek episode.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Dick fan, and there's some of his early books that I think are more similar in vein to this. There's one called Time Out of Joint, which was like an alternate reality novel. But I think his books are very psychological at the core, even the ones like Blade Runner that deal, with in the future and have a lot of hard sci-fi in them. They still, the characters are always struggling with reality and insanity, and so they always function for me like as psychological thrillers as well as sci-fi novels.
It's funny, I was speaking a little while ago, I said it was probably over a year to be honest. I was speaking to a writer of one of the Blade Runner comics that are kicking around right now, and he postulated a theory that the Blade Runner is about slavery. And I was like, I'd never thought of that. And honestly, it was like a little light bulb moment right up in my head. I was like, I totally see that point. Because obviously the replicants are created to do work and they don't have rights and all that sort of stuff. I was like, I've never even thought of that. Never even.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in his books, and they're very metaphorical. And
how, because you're an experienced writer, right? So you've worked Marvel, DC, Casual Fling we talked about. How different or difficult is it to work in different mediums? So how do you go from kind of thinking comic book writer where you've got to let the artist do their thing to help get your message across, versus being a prose writer? Well, dude, it's all on you.
It's interesting. Yeah, in a sense, it is all on the writer in writing fiction, because it's not collaborative. You're just writing it yourself, and especially a book like The Next Time I Die, which has a lot of world building from the ground up, where you really have to build everything.
You have to set the table. I always say in my reviews, especially for issue 1, I always say something like, the writer is setting the table. Just be wary when he pulls the tablecloth, and that sort of stuff, because that's essentially what we're doing, isn't it? We're sort of like set everything up to then sort of at some point, oh, watch out.
Yeah, in a comic, you could. I don't know if rely is the right word, but you could. Because you're collaborating with an artist, but you could also, I guess, rely on the artist to fill in some of those blanks, like especially like in world building. So like, especially visual stuff. Obviously, they supply that you'd have to describe it. It's probably a little harder to research a novel in general as opposed to researching writing a comic or graphic novel. For example, I wrote the Wolverine Max series for Marvel, and some of those books were set in the samurai era in Japan. A lot easier to do in a comic, where you could just say it's samurai era, and like you just have some dialogue, and the artist makes it look right.
Yeah. Puts the armor on and everything.
Yeah, and then you probably sometimes you give the artist some images to draw off of, but you wouldn't have to describe everything in the great detail you'd have to do if you wrote a novel set in that period. So there's a lot of the artist can fill in the blanks.
Surely it's a balancing act, isn't it? So, I mean, one of the things, loads of people love Lord of the Rings, all right? Right. But Tolkien must spend 30 pages telling you what a rock looks like.
Right.
Yeah, no disrespect intended.
Right, there's a comic, you would just see it. You would just see
exactly. Right. So when you're writing a novel, I suppose you've got to be mindful of how far to go, how descriptive you want to be, because part of reading a novel is the reader has to imagine that situation, right?
Yeah, so the visual stuff, like we're talking about, like, I mean, you would just see the rock, you wouldn't have to describe it. But obviously in a book, the big difference is you could get into the psychology more of the character, the inner monologue.
Yes, definitely.
Which you really can't do in a comic to that extent. To that extent, I mean, you could have like captions with like what's going on, but you can't really get as deep into an inner monologue. Also, you can have just from a space standpoint, you can't have dialogue go on too long. Like similar to a screenplay, you can't have like more than 2 or 3 pages in a scene of dialogue in a comic, or it's going to start to seem tedious. I mean, you could do it, but if it's interesting enough, but you're always thinking of like having some action or something cut in to make it more, so you want to pay. But in a book, if you could have a dialogue scene go on, and it be more dialogue driven, and you could do things with the characters that you might not be able to do in a comic.
Okay, cool, excellent. Do you have a favorite genre to write for? You mentioned that the Next Time I Die is a little bit outside of your wheelhouse, although it incorporates things that you're good at. Do you have a particular genre that is kind of like, this is where I'm comfortable, this is what I like to write, leave me alone, please?
Best known as a crime writer. I mean, the reason like hard case crime. With the book again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hold on. Let's make your picture big. There you go.
Zoom in. Yeah,
there you go.
Zoom out. The reason Hard Case Crime is doing it, and the reason they've done several other of my books is, I mean, there's a lot of crime in the book, and I'm basically known as a crime writer, noir fiction. So that vibe, I think, comes through in anything I write.
Cool.
In this book also. But I would say at the core, like anything I do is psychological, whether it's Casual Fling you're talking about, or this book, or my other comic I did recently, Red Border, or some of my novels like The Follower, Twisted City, Cold Caller. I mean, basically I see them as psychological thrillers. So I would say that that's my wheelhouse. Or just what I'm most comfortable doing, because it's interesting for me to create that sort of psychological suspense that's also going on like with physical suspense, wondering about where the character's going. Great, rather than having characters that are black and white, they're usually in shades of gray, and you don't know which way they're gonna go, who the good people are and who the bad people are. I kind of imagine,
help me out with this, right? So I kind of imagine you're sitting there pounding the keyboard or the typewriter, whichever one it is, right? And you know where the story's going, and you in your head you know where you're at, and you're writing the twists and the turns in there, and I can kind of envisage this Machiavellian evil laugh saying, "They'll never work this out." Yeah. How's it feel when you're going through those stages? Because world building's world building, and you've
Right.
got to do it right. That's like drawing the buildings when Spider-Man swings off something. No artist likes drawing buildings, for Christ's sakes, right? So, but you've got to do like the world building. But then when you get to the nitty gritty, the psychological bit, the crime bit, the dropping of the breadcrumbs, how's that make you feel? Do you kind of get this like perverse sense of I am going to torment the readers with this until they don't know what's going on? I just kind of just go with the flow and then see the reaction afterwards.
I think I just go with the flow. Like I just want to.
It's about my dream now. Oh.
I just. I mean, I do a lot of plotting, so I know. I have a general idea of which way, where the story is going to go. But if I come up with a better idea or something that's, I think the basic thing I'm thinking about at those points is what's the most suspenseful direction I could take the story, and so when I get to those breaks in the road where you can go in one direction or the other, I try to make the decision about what's the most suspenseful decision, what's going to be the most exciting. Am I revealing too much information? Should I withhold more information from the reader? I think that's where the suspense comes from, like holding back information. So sometimes in my writing, I'll notice when like I'm just giving out information that I don't have to give out yet. So those are the moments I try to hold back on. So it's not, I don't think I'm like gleefully like trying to take it.
Really. All right. Okay. So I'm a huge Michael Connelly fan.
Oh, okay.
So a friend of mine lent me Bloodwork. I think was the first one I read.
Right.
Then I read the one about the train track, Angel something I think it's called. It's like the tram line. And then I must have umpteen of the books. Yeah.
And the show's good too, Bosch.
Yeah, it's really good. Because they nailed the character, right? They got the right actor. That's all I always think. If you get the right actor, everything's peachy.
Yeah.
But when you read an author, especially prose, probably over comic books, to be fair, because the collaboration element is in effect. When you read a prose writer, for a lot of times, like there are tells, yeah, and you're kind of like, oh, hold on, he's used this trick before. Oh, yeah, oh, I know that. Oh, yeah, you kind of spot the key bits in the dialogue that you think that's going to give that to the I mean, in Bloodwork, for example. Spoiler alert! I'm going to spoil the book. All right, it's been out for God knows how long. But they talk about the number one bad guy on the hit list, right? And then his next door neighbor's called Noon, and it's spelled Noone. Well, I didn't read it as Noon. I read it as number one.
Oh,
I was like, no one. I was like, oh, that's the bad guy. And that's like 30 pages in. So you know what I'm saying? How do you avoid those tells? Is I suppose the long-winded question I'm trying to get at. Because you kind of got to. You're absolutely right. You got to drop the breadcrumbs. You got to twist and turn. But how do you kind of avoid that? And I suppose the second question of that is, how do you know when you've got it bang on right? And you think, yeah, that's it. It's done.
Well, I mean, different from Connelly. I mean, I've done some books that are mysteries where there's like a mystery where you're trying to figure out who did it.
It's always the butler, right?
Usually I'm trying to write, or I do write books where there are more like psychological thrillers where you know who the criminal is, or you have a sense of who the criminal is, but the mystery might be in why it happened or how it happened. It's not necessarily a who done it.
Yeah.
So it's
so
not,
why done it?
But I do notice. Yeah, there are definite things I do from book to book that I'll notice that I'm being repetitive, something I've done before, that I'll usually try to be aware of when I'm doing a revision. I mean, it's usually a good sign because that means like you're a major bestseller if people start realizing this. They know your book so well.
That's a good point.
That they're picking up on those things. But I mean, there are little like micro things that I noticed that I do. Like one thing I've definitely done in multiple books is things start to when things start to improve for a character. Things are going well. Sometimes or often in my books, that's a bad sign.
Oh, the
there's
Star Trek.
there's
The
the
Star
morning
Trek.
before the storm. It's like
It's the Star Trek wedding. That's what that is. Every time there's a wedding in Star Trek, something bad happens.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, so I definitely do that. I mean, I guess it's a technique for sort of keeping readers and viewers, in the case of Star Trek, like off balance. Don't get too comfortable here.
Yeah.
Something bad might happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy wedding day. The Klingons are attacking. Great.
Right, exactly.
Oh, why are they? All right, excellent. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break before we get back to talking about you and your book. Let's see what adverts we have for you. You know what? I don't think we've had this one in a while. It's a bit of a long one, but here you go. This is Definitive Crusade. There we have it, the Definitive Crusade, the podcast on UCPN for everything that is DC Comics. There you go. You get plenty full of Batman on that show for sure. Right. Okay. Influences. You're a creative person. Influences, we've talked about influences of movies and so on that kind of shape or kind of sneak their way into your psyche. Who are your creative influences? Who do you think, man, that they're the bee's knees?
Well, when I was starting out, I would definitely say, because I started out writing short stories and in college, and I was reading a lot of John Cheever, Raymond Chandler. I'm sorry, Raymond Carver.
Okay.
Raymond Chandler came later. Raymond Carver, Samuel Beckett. Anybody who wrote like very clearly and concisely. Hemingway. I was a very big Hemingway fan when I started. But there's really like the film noir of the like 40s and 50s that were the big influences. Movies like Double Indemnity, The Killing, Postman Always Rings Twice, et cetera, et cetera. And then the novels that a lot of those books were based on. So I started reading James M. Cain and Chandler and other crime writers of that era, like Charles Willeford, David Goodis, Patricia Highsmith. But then like Elmore Leonard became like a very big influence just on how he moved crime stories forward with dialogue. Character, always very plot driven and character driven at the same time. I mean, in comics, Brian Azzarello, Ed Brubaker, definitely influences on like my style of writing comics.
The crime stuff predominantly, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Azzarello's done like a whole range of different things, right?
Yeah, a lot of
Faithless right
lot
now
of
is absolutely great, but it's not exactly crime.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, those were like the big ones. A lot of, I mean, I was writing plays also, like when I was in my 20s. So David Mamet, Harold Pinter, like again, like some of the playwrights that sort of wrote like spare and minimally also.
Okay, so
I'm always aware of like being concise in my writing and like not having anything extraneous.
So not an Aaron Sorkin person then.
Well, he could just have his dialogues go on like.
I love Aaron Sorkin, by the way. He's like one of my faves. I absolutely adore I adore The West Wing. So there you go. What can I say? One of my favorite. I think I mentioned this last time. My favorite Chandler line is "A darkness more than night."
Yeah,
which is quoted in. It's a title for a Michael Connelly book as well that he used. And in the credits at the back, he said, "Great title. Yes, I stole it off Raymond Chandler." so there you go. I just like that. I like the image that it brings up of darkness more than. Always reminds me of like the quiet corners of the night. Yeah, like the 2 o'clocks and 3 o'clocks in the morning where there's absolutely no hope. There you go. That's cool. So with all these influences, I'm going to ask a really tricky question here. So I don't mean it to be tricky. All these influences and your writing in that genre as well. How can a creator still stay true to what you want to say without kind of leaning towards one of the influences and just kind of, stay the course? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I mean, I always try to make my books as current as possible. So even if stylistically I'm thinking about writers from like 40, 50 years ago, like, as influences. Perfect. Like what I'm writing about now is always like very current themes. Most of my books take place like in the New York area because that's where I'm from. That's what I know really well. I don't write specifically about people in my life, but I think my characters are very familiar, hopefully, to like people who exist right now.
Okay, cool.
So I want everything.
I can just imagine a circle of our friends talking about.
No,
that one's about me. No, that's me. No, it's me. And someone in the background says,
"Well, occasionally there might be like a line, like but I'll use it in a different context. I won't have that exact person say. But it should be. But I think everything is pretty familiar. I want readers to be able to identify with what's happening to the characters. So like in the next time I die, I want you to feel like you can be there with that character. In this book, like the time is really specific. So it takes place. It begins in 2020, in February 2020. So I'm rarely that specific about the exact time that a novel takes place, but in this one, because time is so important, even has the word in the title, I'm even more current and more than in some of my other books.
Cool. 2020. Was there anything major happening in 2020?
Yeah, I don't know.
It could have an impact on things. Let me think.
Well, it's interesting because when I wrote the book, I started writing the book in 2018, 2019. And I knew the book would start in February 2020. And it was almost like a random date that I just picked for the book to start. And in early 2020, I was even asking myself, like, well, why did I just pick that date? It just seemed random. But then, like, the pandemic started. It took on a whole new meaning, and I actually had to go back and in a revision and deal with that because I mean, not like in any great length. It doesn't really, it doesn't have to do with the pandemic, but but I had to acknowledge it. So it was like a weird serendipity that like there was actually some reason I was starting it on that date.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. Let's have a look at this. This is your website. All right. So right at the top, the book is out on June 28th this year. Well done. Look at the people you've got commenting on your book. You've got Alison Galen, you've got Joe Hill. You know, Joe Hill, he's huge at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah. Yep.
Jason Starr has the New York sound, the energy dialogue that's on the beat by Elmore Leonard. Excellent. So, hypnotically good. There was one I liked. Where did I see it before? It said something like, how does Jason Starr do it? I only meant to pick up the book. It feels like I've been reading an hour and I'm already X amount of pages in.
Oh yeah. Brett Easton Ellis. Yeah, Brett.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. I like that. I like books I can get lost in. There's a brief catch up of your work to date. Cool. I have to ask you. We talked about influencers. The girl on the cover. Do you know this person? If you do, can I have her phone number, please? No.
So Hard Case Crime. One cool thing about them is that they obviously have these covers that harken back to the days of the classic,
yes,
Pulp Fiction, lurid covers for the 1940s, 50s. But every cover is like an original painting, actually. So.
So what you're saying is no, I can't have a number.
Nerves actually exist. You'll have to.
Yeah. I got. What did I buy? I bought Gun Honey from Hardcase. It's a comic series, and they have the sort of the gangster mall type girl, like a Bond girl style cover a lot of the time. So that was impressive.
Yeah, I don't know if her body is like anatomically possible, like
but it's shading
like Barbie, like I don't know, it's proportions, but
stop spoiling my fun, man. All right, excellent. One thing I've noticed in books, where there's like where something changes for a character, all right. So I'm kind of thinking The Fugitive, the movie, a little bit Casual Fling, maybe, a little bit. What was the other one I was thinking of? Consenting Adults with Kevin Kline. These are kind of characters that are just normal characters, right? And then something happens, and then they turn into like super sleuths. So like Harrison Ford's character in The Fugitive, he's a doctor, but yeah, he manages to tramp out. He managed to fake his ID. He does all this stuff. I'm like, can doctors really do that? And the Kevin Kline one in Consenting Adults, he's a jingle writer. And then, something happens and then he turns into like a super sleuth.
Right.
You know? In Casual Fling, you do set that up early doors because Miguel in his internet, he's got his oracle, as it were.
Right.
Yeah. So you set that up pretty early. How tricky is it to avoid that particular trope where the character becomes not Superman, of course, but then becomes really good at a set of skills that you think that person just didn't have?
I mean, like what do you mean in this book? Like, what do you mean?
I'm just thinking generally in the trope of crime, when something happens, the main character tends to then develop other skills that you think, well, hold on a second. I'm not related to this book. I'm just thinking from the creative process, because you're a crime writer. That must be something that you come across frequently. Like my guy can do this. This is his. This is the Bible on the bloke, on the person, and then something happens, and therefore he has to then become good at something else. Yeah. So then how?
I'm just trying to think how that would apply to this.
No,
I mean, there are some books like where like in action movies or something, where a character has like a hidden set of skills.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. You say much better. This is why you're the writer.
You don't know about.
How do you kind of? Because
I guess like in the action movie, like you would know like judo or something, and like
Yeah. Well,
Um,
in an alternative reality story,
James Bond has every
yeah.
set of skills possible. Can
Yeah.
operate any type of helicopter if he needs to, whatever needs to be done. In this case, I guess like I'm just trying to think how that would apply. Well, he's a defense attorney.
But then
I think it's more in this case like it's more psychological. Like he thinks he's so good at his job because he is like a prominent defense attorney, and when we meet him, he's defending this killer who's on trial for multiple murders, and he knows his client's pathology inside out. I guess his it's not necessarily in this case like that he has a hidden set of skills, and I think this is probably true in noir fiction in general, but that he has a hidden set of flaws that he's not aware of.
Okay.
So
I like that. Yeah, it's cool.
So there's that psychology, like where he thinks he's more sure of the world than he actually is. So I don't think it's like this heroic situation where he's going to have like this hidden set of skills that are going to save the world. It's actually going to be these flaws that are they going to trip him up or not? Like, is he going to overcome those flaws? I guess it's a more human
experience,
fatalistic, but like some sort of like a different perspective on it.
Cool. I really like that idea. I absolutely totally do, because I know we live in a positivity first kind of world, but you know it's good to recognize where our weaknesses are, you know, and sometimes we need that cathartic experience to sort of like wake us up with the, oh my god, you know what, I'm not I've forgotten his name. I'm not Joe DiMaggio. I can't hit all that, you know, that sort of stuff, you know. Derek Jeter was the guy I was thinking of there.
Right.
I tried to be more relevant and came up with Derek Jeter. You can tell I've watched baseball for like God knows how long. Right, excellent. Okay, so as we said, the book is out on June 28th.
Yep.
Bookstores
everywhere.
and online.
UK, US, UK, Australia, Canada.
All right, okay.
English language everywhere.
If you're looking for more information about Jason and his books, you can check out the website. It's just there. Dead easy to remember that one. Don't forget 2 R's in Star, please. Yeah, put 1 star in, you go someplace completely different. Thank Google. And of course, if you want to have any comments, you can hit Jason up on Twitter. There you go. There's the @ and of course Instagram as well. There you go. Cool. Excellent. Jason, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really do appreciate it. It is so good to see you again, sir.
You too.
Yeah. I'm absolutely. I'm grinning. When your name come up on my sheet, I was like, yes, go on. Yeah. Like, do you want to speak to Jason again? I most certainly do. Yes, I do. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
I'm not telling you which ones I say no to. Just, you know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right. Don't forget to check out the UCPM for all your favorite shows, including the Definitive Crusade for everything that's DC. And of course, the No Prize podcast for all your Marvel, Disney Plus, and MCU noise. I expect there will be some Obi-Wan still going on in that show. What are you going to do? You can't force it, can you? Boom. All right. Jason, thanks again.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. And as always, adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.com, all about comic pop culture.